everybody, my name's Lara. I'm a dual Canadian British national and I moved to British Columbia, Canada from the UK in November 2022 with my husband Rich and our 2 dogs, and we're absolutely loving every minute of it. We love our life out here so much. I upload YouTube videos every Monday and Friday, and these are a mix of documenting our day-to-day life here in Canada. They'll eventually be travel videos, and I also speak about the experience of moving from the UK to Canada, how we did it, things we've picked up along the way. And if that sounds like something you'd be interested in, then please consider subscribing, and let's get on with today's video. In today's video, I'm going to share the main reasons for why we left the UK for Canada. We've been in Canada for about 2.5 months now, but it's something we've been planning since 2018. The reason why we waited until 2022 to move was my husband Rich did say back in 2018 that he'd want about 4 years until we did move, just to spend the time with family and friends, because my parents came with us to Canada, his parents are still home in the UK, and we probably wouldn't have been able to financially do the move until 2022 anyway. Although saying all this, my husband Rich did say to me the other night that if he'd have realised what his life would be like out here, how easy it is for him to FaceTime friends and family back home, that he would have done the move years ago. And that's just an example of how much he's loving it, and obviously I completely love it here as well. I'll just give you a bit of a brief background into mine and Richard's relationship. So we've been together since the 10th of July 2014, so almost 9 years now. And obviously moving to Canada wasn't something we discussed straight away when we got together, you know, we were just enjoying being together and learning things about each other and experiencing new things. But for me, moving to Canada has always been part of my life and always in the background of my mind. My mum's Canadian and my dad's British, which is how I have my dual nationality. And in 1996, when I was young, they were actually going to move to Nelson, British Columbia with my brother and I. So it was something I was meant to do years ago, but it didn't happen because my mum and dad just got settled with jobs in London and they started making money, and it just didn't happen. But I spent a lot of my childhood in Canada on various family trips over there, and I just always had a special feeling about Canada. I was always like wowed by it, and it just had a special place in my heart, and it always felt more like home than what the UK did. Even though I was young, and that probably doesn't sound believable, I would just always look back on Canada with such fond memories, and I'd always be like so proud to tell people that my mum was Canadian and everything. So yeah, and it's so funny, there's these home videos from the last time we went to Canada as a family, like on a family holiday, which was the year 2000. And there's videos of me talking in a Canadian accent as a kid because I wanted all the Canadian people to think that I was one of them. At this time I didn't realise I had dual nationality, so I didn't realise I was Canadian. But that's just funny to me, and that's just an example of how at such a young age I felt like I belonged there. But Richard and I would have discussed the possibility of moving to Canada late 2017, early 2018. So in 2017, Richard and I decided that we were going to do a USA and Bahamas trip. So we were going to land in Orlando, do a few nights at the parks, and then go to Miami, have a couple nights there, fly to the Bahamas, have a week there, and then fly back to the UK. As that year we'd just done Disneyland Paris, and that was actually my first time at a Disney park, and we really enjoyed it and kind of wanted to experience the American Disney park. Rich has been there before, I'd never been because Disneyland Paris was my first time, and we'd also discussed doing a Canada road trip at some point as well. And I remember towards the back end of 2017 we were sitting in a Wetherspoons pub having lunch. I'd just had a hair appointment which was next to a Wetherspoons pub. If you don't know what a Wetherspoons is, it's a chain of pubs in the UK that just do really cheap booze and drinks. So we were having lunch there, and I remember I said to Rich, I think I'd actually like to do our Canada road trip before we do this USA trip in 2019, because it was just something that I felt more excited about, was doing the Canada road trip, because I hadn't been to Canada for years at that point. As I said earlier, the last time we were there was the year 2000. My mum and dad had done road trips around BC before. Even when we used to go there on family holidays, my brother and I would stay with my granny and grandpa, and my mum and dad would drive to Banff and do these road trips. My cousin Luke had also done a RV road trip around Canada, and it was something I so wanted to do. And luckily Rich was like, yeah, let's do the Canada road trip first as well, because he'd done Disney in Florida before, so he didn't feel like he needed to go. And I think we just both felt more excited at the idea of the Canadian road trip than doing the trip to the States. So I remember then and there we like started planning out a rough route of what we were going to do for our road trip, but we didn't stick to that plan that we'd made in the pub, because that was just kind of casually over lunch and a few drinks at the pub, whereas it was something we really needed to research, which obviously we did. But I knew one of the stops I wanted on this road trip was to come back to Penticton, because that's where all my childhood spent in Canada had pretty much been, and it held a lot of memories for me, and I knew that I loved it in Penticton, so that was somewhere I knew that I would want to go on this trip. And obviously I hadn't been to Penticton in such a long time. At that point it was like 17, 18 years, but just from the memories I had of it, I knew that I loved it. And when I started looking at the pictures online and videos of it online, it was exactly how I remembered it, and all of these memories were coming back, and I just had this like really special feeling in my heart, like looking at all these videos of Penticton, and I just remember thinking to myself, I was like, this is where I want to live, this is where I want to stay forever. Like, I just love Penticton so much. I've always felt like I belonged in Canada, and just seeing all these pictures again was just bringing all those feelings back. And I think one day while we were like planning out the road trip and looking at Penticton, I think I was just like to Rich, should we just move to Penticton? That just kind of came, it wasn't out of the blue, because obviously we were like looking into this road trip, but yeah, I was just like, should we move to Penticton? And luckily he didn't take very much convincing. He did say he would need to see Penticton in person before he definitely finally made a decision, but he was like, yeah, I'd totally be up for moving to Canada. And I think the thing is that Richard and I have travelled quite a bit in our 9 years together, so I think it's always given us itchy feet. I mean, we both never saw ourselves staying in our hometown for the rest of our lives. We didn't want to live our life just having lived in one place. So we knew that we weren't going to be staying in the UK, definitely not in our hometown long term. We thought if we were going to stay in the UK, we'd maybe move to Brighton, because that was a place in the UK we really liked. And we spend a lot of time in Amsterdam. We love Amsterdam, and we always used to lightheartedly say like about moving to Amsterdam, not with the thought of actually following it through, but I'm just using that as an example of how we didn't feel like we belonged in the UK really. And obviously with Canada, where I have Canadian citizenship, it was something that was more obtainable and something we felt like we'd actually be able to do. So our 2019 road trip rolled around, we visited Penticton, both absolutely loved it, and yeah, we were all systems go, we were going to move to Canada. I know I said that would be brief. I have a bit of a tendency to chat on a little bit. Hopefully that covers and explains how we first discussed the idea of moving to Canada and how moving to Canada came to be. I'm now just going to discuss a couple more reasons as to why we left the UK for Canada. And just before I get into these, I just want to say that I don't mean any disrespect or anything to the UK. It's the country where I was born, it's where we're from. I don't mean anything in a disrespectful way, but obviously we did leave the UK for another country, and there are going to be reasons behind that and as to why we did leave the UK. So I don't mean any offence to anybody living in the UK. It's where all our friends and family are, so we'll definitely be visiting, and there are amazing places in the UK for sure, but I just want to explain a bit more why we left the UK for Canada. So Richard and I eventually want to have children, and we thought moving to Canada would provide a better future for them than what it would in the UK. That's not saying that there's anything wrong with the UK and that they wouldn't have a good life in the UK, but obviously from my own personal experience, I spent a lot of my childhood here, and my favourite childhood memories were in Canada, and I knew I'd want my children to have the similar experiences to what I had growing up out here. And also because I have Canadian citizenship and Richard has British citizenship, we thought having our children live out here, they'd have dual nationality just as I do, and that would just give them lots of possibilities in life. If they did want to move to the UK or spend some time in the UK, they could easily do that. So yeah, for our children also to have dual nationality was a good part of moving from the UK to Canada. Another big reason why we left the UK for Canada is that we were basically fed up with our lifestyle in the UK, our own personal lifestyle. We both worked full-time in London back in the UK, UK. Now London is an amazing city, honestly, it really, really is amazing. There's so much diversity and culture and history there. It is an incredible city. But I will say, when you work full-time in London, especially in the city, it definitely loses some of its magic. You know, every single day you're just commuting into London, you're surrounded by mostly miserable, I'm sorry, most Londoners in the city are miserable workers who are also doing their daily commute into work. And you know, London doesn't sparkle like it did before when you visited London as a tourist, I suppose. And we just ended up really not enjoying being in London. We didn't have a very good work-life balance because we'd have to leave the house so early to get to London for 9 o'clock. And then we wouldn't be getting home until late in the evening and we'd be so tired we'd hardly have an evening together. Our commute into London was about an hour and 15 minutes in total, so that's 2.5 hours out of your day just on travelling to and from work. Whereas here in Penticton, our commute is only 6 minutes. Our work-life balance did get better in the UK after the pandemic because we mostly worked from home, but just in general we weren't enjoying being in the UK anymore. Our hometown had gone downhill quite a lot. Our high street, everything was shutting, nothing was open. There was so many stabbings going on in the area and it just wasn't for us anymore. You know, we'd lived there for 30 years by the time we moved out here and it didn't feel like us. And I'd felt this way for a long time after all my childhood trips to Canada, but we've had a few trips to Canada as adults together before we moved out here. And we'd come away from Canada just feeling like Canada was home and the UK didn't feel like home to us anymore. So we knew that that's where we were meant to be and we just preferred the lifestyle out there. Now I will just say, obviously I know that we came to Canada before on trips, so we're doing our own leisurely things, not working or really living in Canada, so I know that there's a difference there between the two, but obviously now we do live and work here in Canada and we absolutely love it, just like we thought we would, and much prefer our way of life and lifestyle here, living and working, than we did living and working in the UK. And just finishing off on the subject of quality of life, we just felt like we would have a better quality of life here in Canada. You know, even with things like the air quality. So in London, the air quality was absolutely terrible because of all the pollution. It's such a busy city, there's traffic everywhere. Here in Penticton, the air is so much fresher and better for you, and when you go outside, you really feel like you're breathing in fresh air. And the air here also has a really nice smell. Like, you know when you go to hot countries on holiday and they have that really nice smell that you can't really explain, but it doesn't smell like the UK? It's a similar thing out of here. I feel like the air has a certain smell to it and it just smells really nice. Another thing is like the quality of the water. So the water here in Penticton that we get through our tap is so much softer than the water that we had in the UK from our taps. I don't know if that makes sense, or I probably can't really describe it very well, but the best way I could probably describe it is, you know, like if you used a Lush bath bomb in the water and you'd kind of run your hands through the water and it would feel really soft from like all the essential oils in the water. The water here kind of feels like that. So when you kind of rub it with your hands, when you're washing your hands, it just feels really soft. And like when we have a shower here or wash our hands here, we just feel like we're getting cleaner than what we did in the UK. I can't really describe it, and it probably sounds a bit weird, but yeah, the water just has a nicer feeling to it here. And with our laundry as well, our laundry dries so soft out here, and I think that's because the water here is softer. Whereas a lot of stuff that's come from the UK in our shipping container that hasn't been washed here yet feels like crispier, if you know what I mean. And we also personally find the quality of the grocery food that we buy out here better than it is in the UK. It can be more expensive. A lot of groceries here are more expensive than what they are in the UK, which is annoying because cost of living for some groceries in the UK is a lot cheaper than what it is here, but we do personally find the food to be of better quality here. And we've only been living here for about 2.5 months, but we feel like our quality of life has improved drastically. Like, it's just so much better for us out here. It's exactly what we wanted. And my lovely mum, who's Canadian, wanted to move back to Canada her whole life. I've mentioned before that she very sadly has early onset dementia. She's doing so much better here than what she was in the UK, and I know that sounds like I'm sitting here and saying it just for the sake of it because of how much I love Canada, but honestly I'm really not. I wouldn't lie or sugarcoat about something like that, but honestly she's doing so well. I think she knows she's back home, and her quality of life is so much better out here as well than what it was back home in the UK. I'm going to finish this video off now, but I do just want to say again, I hope this isn't coming across as really anti-UK. It's not meant to, and that's not my purpose of this video at all. As I said at the start of the video, the UK is where we're from. It will always be home. It will always be special to us. It's an amazing country. There's so much to go and see and do in the UK. There's so much history, beautiful landscapes, the pubs. Oh my god, I miss some of those English cozy pubs. I'm going to do a video at some point when we've been here a bit longer of things that I miss in the UK, but pubs will definitely be on there. There's lovely people in the UK, and I just want to make sure that this isn't coming across as anti-UK because it's not meant to. I love the UK, but as I said, obviously we did leave the UK and there are going to be reasons behind that, so I just wanted to give what our personal reasons for leaving the UK were, and it will be different for everybody. Everybody will have their own reasons for leaving somewhere, staying somewhere, and that's just how it is. People are different, people have different views, and yeah. Some people don't feel that Canada's right for them and they move somewhere else. Some people might move from the UK to Canada and find it's not the right thing and move back. Everybody has their own opinions and feelings about certain countries, and that's absolutely fine because your life is for living the way you want to live it, and you just deserve to be happy, so do what makes you happy. And everybody should be able to feel the way that they feel and to be happy in the place that they live, wherever in the world that may be, because every country is amazing. I hope you enjoyed today's video and that you found it interesting. If you'd like to see more Canada related content, then please consider subscribing to my channel and also following my social media platforms listed below. I'm Lara, this is Our Life in Canada, and until next time, take care. Bye!